Welcome to Speaking from Experience. I'm Vishaka Kumar from the Intercultural Skills Lab at the Rotman School of Management, University of Toronto. On every episode of this podcast, we will bring you the fascinating journey of one of our graduates from our Business Edge program, an intensive bridging program for newcomers and internationally educated professionals who are skilled, driven, and confident, but find themselves underemployed or unable to advance their careers in Canada. Our graduates are not here to talk about their experience in the program, but instead about their expertise, professional background, and their experience searching for work in their fields as newcomers. We hope these stories will offer guidance and direction to anyone preparing to enter the workforce as a newcomer to Canada.
Speaking from experience, know who you are and use it with intention.
This is Patricia Molina. Patricia graduated from the Business Edge program in 2020. She's an event manager at IAB Canada and has several years of experience working in PR, communications, and social media strategy. She joined me to talk about her experiences as a newcomer from Spain with only a few years of professional work experience under her belt. She talks about resume challenges, networking your way into a career, and how knowing the rules of job hunting is the most important step.
Welcome, Patricia. Thank you so much for joining me today. And we're very excited to learn about you, your experience, and the insights you will share with us. Hi, Vishaka. Thank you for having me here. It's exciting to be part of the first episode. Wonderful. So let's just sort of launch into it. Could you give us a bit of background of where you're from, what you do, and what brought you to Canada?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Spain, from a small fisherman town next to Barcelona. I studied tourism, and then I moved into advertising and public relations. Then I did my master's in the UK in international public relations. It's a lifelong journey. And then I went into digital marketing. And obviously, the last course I did was with you guys at Rotman, the Business Edge program, which was wonderful. And then why did I come to Canada? It was in 2013, right when the economic crisis hit Europe. And I was working in a project in Brussels as a communication manager for a non-for-profit in higher education. That project ended after 8 months. So I had a friend who was like, Patricia, you've lived abroad and by yourself. Why don't we go to Canada for a year and explore? And I was like, sure, I've got nothing better to do right now. So let's see what's up in Canada. So I moved here. And then at the beginning, it was sort of a struggle for me specifically. And I think this is quite different from professionals who move to Canada because they come in with several years of experience. And in my case, my communications career had just started. So when I came here, I was faced with the challenge of many employers being like, okay, this girl is from Spain. I don't know where she studied. And mind you, I had studied in the UK. So you would think that's more international. But anything that was in Canada in relation to studies or work experience, it was completely invalid for them. So I started at the easiest thing because, Canada is expensive. So you need to be able to support yourself. I started working at an English school as a receptionist. And then 3 months later, I got a job with eBay Classifieds. How did that happen? The magic word, networking, as always, right?
And was this something that you were doing for the first time, networking in Canada or even in Europe? What was that experience like? Was there some insight or direction you had?
Yeah, I think I got a crash course in Belgium for sure in networking, because when you go to Belgium or Brussels, in this case, it's like being in the city with like the top people from Europe, because they all want to work for the European Commission or the European Union. So networking is part of that, first step to get into those internship programs. So, but it was never intentional for me, right? Because I didn't have any interest in going into politics in that sense. But it was more through friendship. So that was sort of like dipping my toes into the networking professional world. And in Canada, again, it wasn't intentional. It was more through friendships, and through sharing those struggles of like, oh my God, I can't believe my resume doesn't count here. And I have all these studies, like I wouldn't have any issues finding jobs in Spain or in Europe. But here it's just like automatically wasn't valid. It's just like you needed some sort of Canadian experience for employers to start looking at your resume.
And were there ways in which that was being made clear to you? And was it at the interview? Was it at the application stage?
Yeah, I think it was at the application stage. And if not, on the first interview, when there would be like, so any Canadian experience or the issues with visas as well, right? If you were here for a year, although I was planning on staying, they wouldn't even go through that. So it was frustrating.
It's a story we hear constantly about no Canadian experience and therefore we can't hire you.
And it takes a toll on your confidence, right? Because you come here thinking, oh, I'm good, look at all these things I've done in Europe. And then all of a sudden it's like, no, sorry, you need to start from the bottom again, which is quite frustrating. Imagine for those who have like years of experience, right? I can only imagine.
Was there something different about that interview with eBay Classifieds? What was something that stood out about your application?
Firstly, it came as a reference, right? So the hiring manager had in high regards the person that was referring me. And we connected over some background stories. He was raised in South Africa. And he saw in my resume that I had been working in education projects with the European Union to help students in South Africa with mobility programs. So he wanted to know more about that. And he was actually very thankful that some people were doing projects like this. And I think it was, first of all, the skill set, right? But the human factor that differentiated me from the rest. And then I guess he remembered me, and it was quite clear because 2 days after I got a call. So when that happens, it's always clear that you bonded, right, over the interview.
Absolutely. It's definitely helpful when you're able to make these kinds of connections. And sometimes that's just sort of, especially with someone who's hiring you, that's often just luck, especially if you don't know them prior. And it's definitely on the candidate to be able to identify where those opportunities to bond over things that are not as part of the job description, just to help you stand out.
Yeah, I'm a huge advocate for like that personal part that we have, because I think that we all have the skill sets if you're applying, right, for the job, or if not, you can make up for personality. I mean, I know there's like a lot of like debates now about unconscious bias, right, or how to not be biased towards that person you're interviewing, but that's pretty much impossible. So, I mean, you can in a way, but like at the end of the day, you want to work with that person, and you don't want to work with that person only because their skill set, right? Because absolutely, there's things you can't teach.
Yeah, and it's definitely something to be mindful when you are interviewing as well. It just gives you sort of like insight, and it gives you an expectation also on the outcome. That's definitely something to be mindful of. So yeah, you've joined eBay Classifieds, and take me through some of the other opportunities that led to.
Yeah, so I actually worked for eBay Classifieds for quite a long time, 9 years, which is a long time, especially in Canada, because I feel like people stay for 2 years in a job and then move, right? Which is a better way to advance. But in my case, I was happy with the people I was working with. There were opportunities to advance and grab new projects. So I started in customer service. It was easier. And then from there, I moved into developing communication guides for new employees, training them, creating guidelines for social media. Because at that time, the team had a very minor impact in social media. Those opportunities just came because I went to my manager with solutions, right? I'm not a person that's happy with just one task. I like to do different things. Otherwise, my brain gets bored. So I would always find problems or opportunities, and I would go to my manager and be like, listen, why don't we do this? I think it would be great. So that's how my manager started knowing me better, right? My background and what I like, what I enjoyed. Because obviously she was busy with a gazillion things and doesn't have time to think about what does Patricia want to do, what is her skill set, and how can we take advantage of her in the team. So I couldn't define my role because I just did many different things. And then I started going to the office more often. So that's something I didn't say. I worked remotely for the whole of 9 years, pre-COVID. So I have lived in COVID for a long time. It's funny because talking to your manager has changed because of COVID, because we're not face-to-face anymore. We're not spending time in offices. And I actually had to do that from the beginning. So learning how to develop those relationships online. And it was through online and then having the chance to go to the office that I started talking more with my managers over lunch. It wasn't even in a meeting. It wasn't through work. It was through silly and regular conversations that they were like, oh, Patricia, I didn't know you had this background. I didn't know you had such a strong communication skill set. I kept saying what I thought, I think we can do much more in social media. I think we can do X, Y, and Z. And again, you come in with solutions, you're going to get the job. So they created a specific position for me, which was to lead the international team for social media. So I had to hire internally teams for different markets and then train them in communications and how to support the marketing teams, the local marketing teams. And it's obviously quite different how you communicate on social, that how you communicate via email, right? So it was quite challenging, but it was fun to go through that process of internal hiring and training. After that, what happened? Well, I was forced out of the company because eBay Classifieds was acquired by a company named Adevinta, which is the biggest classifieds group in Europe, I think now in the world. And we were acquired, and you know what happens with acquisitions, like a bunch of people were let go. I was one of them. And then I had to forcefully go through this process of which is where Business Edge helped me a lot actually, of okay, who am I? What are my strong skills? What do I like doing? And what does that job look like? So to go through that almost therapy process of understanding yourself, looking inside, what do you want? And look for a new job purposefully. And that's where I landed at IAB Canada as an events manager.
I didn't realize that you had been let go, and then that is something that pushed you outside of the classified ad space to events, which I'm now wondering, did you always have a passion, and the Business Edge program was here to sort of help you decide what your next job would look like? Was there some sort of specific roles and responsibilities that you had identified which led to your job as an events manager?
Yeah, definitely. To make something clear, right? I wanted to leave even before I was let go. And that's something I remember working with a lot at the Business Edge program, right? Fighting with those limiting beliefs or that idea of no, I deserve X, so I'm working towards this, but it never happens. So you need to learn to let it go. Because I reached the point where there was nowhere else to go, right, in my company. And I find that something that happens quite a lot is safety, right? And I don't know what's next. And so also working is hard, so you don't have really much time to do another job, which is finding a job. But anyways, if anybody's in that same position and is listening, please take the time to do it. Don't be like me. You will regret it. But yeah, in terms of things that I identified, there were internal communications came up a lot. Events was part of it because it has that communication component, but it also has that human side. But I had been doing internal events for a long time for my company as well, because again, I'm very social. So I always come up with new tasks for myself. Previously, I had some experience in Spain as well, working for a PR company. And then I was lucky enough that they saw my strong skill set and also my personality. And we've been able to do a great job with events, improving attendance, getting more new members, getting the IIB more out there for the industry. And yeah, and communication has all to do with events, right? Because if you don't sell your event, if you don't market it well, then nobody's going to come, even if you have great content, which is what I enjoyed a lot. And for me, one of the strongest things for my teams and why the projects that I led were successful is because the teams were super engaged, right? They loved working with each other. They liked the environment. So I find even if what you're doing is not the best at the time, obviously working with GDPR and privacy regulations is, again, not the sexiest topic. But if you work with people that make it fun, then you're going to enjoy it no matter what. Same applies for doing something you love and then you work with people that you don't get along with. It makes you hate the job, right? At some point. That's why I'm a huge advocate for people over, over technical skills. But yeah, so it was part of it as well, the human part. And I was lucky enough to find out that at IB Canada, or it goes from the little thing of organizing an event, of getting food and coffee and whatnot, right? Which is more admin stuff in my case, to like the bigger picture of, okay, the strategy and where is this event going and how are we going to communicate and who do we want to be in the room, and the sort of extras, right? What do we get out of these new members? Do we get the IB Canada message out there? There's a lot of things that you can do. And they've allowed me to leverage social media for this. Huge advocate for organic, paid as well. But, when your budgets are limited, then you need to put more effort into organic. And that has worked wonders for us. So yeah, I've been able to touch on different things, which ultimately is what I like, right? I like having a holistic view of my job.
It just sounds like an amazing opportunity that you identified through some sort of self-reflection exercises. And I was now hoping you could expand on some of the attributes, but then I'm now going to refer to them as strengths because that's what they are.
Well, as I said, right, like based on what I saw at Business Edge as well, we all come with a skill set already, right? You have those technical skills, so there's no reason, in theory, you shouldn't get the job. But it's that human, that personal element that's going to differentiate you from the rest. Again, I'm social by nature, so I enjoy talking to people. I enjoy like connecting people, right? But that doesn't mean that, everybody has to be like that to network or to get the job, right? It doesn't mean that you go into the interview and you're loud and boisterous and like, basically like me. You don't have to be like me, right? Like, imagine, I don't know, I think of the quiet people that I enjoyed a lot when I work with different types of people at eBay Classifieds. There's different reasons why I like them, right? Like, for example, I don't know, let's say John, who's quiet and, sticks to his job and doesn't do anything. He is an expert in investing, which has nothing to do with the job itself, for example. But I go to this event, right, or to the office, or I schedule a one-on-one 30 minutes with him. And that's the starting point, right? I'm like, oh, John knows way more than what he does on the daily. That's super interesting. I'm having an intimate conversation where I can learn more about him. And he's not being social, he's not being loud, he's not being out there, right? But he's showing me who he is. And from investing, it goes to like what he likes and what he's good at doing and how can he support more my department or the job I do. Or in the future, if I'm a hiring manager, then I'll be like, oh my God, I spent some time with John and I know what he likes and what he's good at. So I'm going to think of him first.
That's so interesting because now you're telling me that you're sort of using your skills in communications and connecting with people, but now it's sort of more intentional. You have recognized someone's interests and identified what they will like doing, and then already thinking about how they can add value to the work that they're bringing. And I'm guessing this is what you did with yourself as well.
Yeah, and I think it's exactly what you said. It wasn't intentional before. It was more just social, like being myself. And also because I've always been solutions oriented, right? So I would always speak up naturally, being like, oh, why don't we do this? And why don't we do that? But there's a lot of people that have those ideas and never speak up. And when I was in the position of hiring those people, then I was like, oh, that's exactly how my managers feel. Like you have a gazillion things going on through your mind. You're not going to think, it's not even in the list to think about what John wants in his life, I got resumes, right? It was an internal hiring, but still I didn't know these people because they were from different markets and I didn't used to work with them on the daily. So I got the resume, I saw the skill set, very similar, all of them. But it was through those interviews where I can see, okay, I have to tell you, everything is related. That comes from my years in customer service, right? Learning how to read people, learning how to advance what someone wants to hear. Then I see that, oh, this person, they're leaning in, they're engaging, right? They have passion for the job, which is not something you can teach. If I had to interview someone who, at first, they had an amazing resume, and again, they were studying marketing or something, and I would be like, okay, this seems like the right fit. But then in the interview, they would be like laid back, not speaking much, not giving me an answer to things really. I would be like, no, because I have to work with this person. That means that I'm going to have to put extra effort into them doing their job. But you can't teach passion. That's what I say to people, right? Like you want to find a different job or like you're scared because you're not going to have enough experience on something. Keep trying. What you don't know, you can learn. But your soft skills, you can't teach them, I guess, but if you have them already, just exploit them.
What is a bit of advice you would like to give newcomers or people who've been in Canada for a few years, finding themselves stuck or frustrated? What is something you'd like to tell people in such situations?
Well, I think we all come with different experiences, right? So my experience in Spain or in Europe won't be the same as someone who's been working in Africa or like South Africa or India, right? So the first step to me, it's like know the rules of the game. Because you may have an excellent resume back in South Africa, but it may not be ideal in Canada. That's actually one of the first things I noticed after Business Edge, because my resume was perfect for Europe, but it wasn't getting picked up here. And then, let me tell you, I had 20 interviews in 2 months. I was getting picked up. Like, it wasn't a problem to get that interview. And it's because my resume was exactly created to the way that, those programs that scan through resumes or through, hiring managers. It's the way it was supposed to be. So that was, my foot was the door there. That's the first step. So once you know how to have a perfect resume, how to scan through the job positions as well, right? A lot of the things that they're going to ask you in your interview, it's in that job position, right? Or a lot of things that you have to say in your resume, it's in the job position. And yes, you need to rewrite your resume every time you apply for a job. I know it's annoying, but it works. If you're doing all these steps correctly and you're preparing for the interview, finding out information about the company, and also asking yourself, why do you want to work there, right? It's a bidirectional interview. It's not about you only wanting to work there. It's about, is it the right fit for you as well? Hence to referring back to the Business Edge program, doing that, those 2 columns of like negotiables and non-negotiables, you really need to understand what you're looking for. Otherwise, the pool is too great. And then if that's still not happening, take a break, it's a long process, and see how you can network, informational interviews, practice, go to meetups. Now you can't do this, but I don't know, in your job, schedule one-on-one interviews with your coworkers or like even a coffee chat. If you're not used to the online world, and I feel like we all are now, but it's different when you're getting interviews, right? Just practice, get comfortable with it, and sell yourself well. Know yourself to sell yourself,
I also wanted to know if you had any thoughts or tips for when people are sort of starting that self-reflection journey on identifying what they want, their skills, their strengths, and letting that inform what their next job is.
Right. I think that's one of the things I learned at Business Edge, right? Because, it's an international program, so you get to see a lot of, different people, and we all feel the same way, right? We're all special in a unique way. And I think one of the things we learned is that you don't need to change yourself to fit into the Canadian market. The Canadian market, if we all know what Canada is, it means everyone, right? Like it thrives in diversity. There's a place for you here. There's a place for your personality and who you are. I feel like they're trying to change that to conform to like what they think people would like. And I believe quite in the contrary, right? I feel like you should embrace who you are and your background and what you come with, which is completely different than what everybody else has to offer, right? There's only one you. Make that your strong selling point.
Thank you so much, Patricia, for joining us. It was such an amazing conversation to learn about your journey, and I really enjoyed how positive, encouraging, and inspiring a lot of your stories today have been. And I truly hope our audiences learn something from you.
Thank you for listening to Speaking from Experience. I'm Vishaka Kumar from the Rotman School of Management's Intercultural Skills Lab. For more information about our programs, please click the link in the show notes. Or follow us on LinkedIn. That's where we post all our updates. Thank you to Patricia Molina for sharing her experience and expertise with us today. This podcast is recorded and produced by me, Vishaka Kumar. Avery Moore Kloss is our podcast editor. Speaking from Experience is supported by the Rotman Intercultural Skills Lab at the University of Toronto, which promotes a deeper understanding of intercultural competencies for professionals. Thank you for listening.